Hi everyone, and welcome to Bridging the Gap.
I'm your host, Kelly Lovell, and this week I'm joined by our expert guest, Kathleen Davis. And we're going to explore a little bit how to move up and get what you want in the workplace. Kathleen is the senior editor at Fast Company. She's in charge of all of the leadership content for fastcompany.com. The leadership section is one of the most read content on Fast Company. In this position, Kathleen has hired staff and created popular programs including Ask the Expert, Strong Female Lead, Hit the Ground Running, The Future of Work, and more. I'm very excited to have Kathleen join us today. So thank you again for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
Could you perhaps start us off by sharing just a little bit in terms of a little bit about your journey and how you ended up where you are today?
Sure. So I kind of didn't follow the path that maybe a lot of my colleagues did as far as having a lot of connections in the field. I am from Michigan originally, a very, very, very small town. And I went to a state university there they had a journalism program, and I was kind of being like a big fish in a small pond in that it gave me a lot of opportunities to try things out. I was the editor-in-chief of our literary magazine. I interned at a alternative weekly in Detroit. And then I actually moved to London to do something totally unrelated to journalism, just kind of experience the world and travel since I had grown up in such a small space. And after that year, I moved to New York, and I didn't work in journalism for the first year or so, but I kept writing, kept applying places, and unfortunately, I didn't have the strong alumni network that I think a lot of people rely on early in their careers to find those first jobs. So I just kind of had to get my foot in the door any way possible, and I made a lot of mistakes in that, I would just blindly send resumes or just apply for every job posting. I kind of wasn't being really smart and strategic about it. But luckily, I ended up getting my first magazine job at Popular Photography. The editor there kind of took a chance on a random, resume that was sent in from a job posting. And from there, I've worked at several different magazines and kind of slowly moved my way up. How I actually got the job at Fast Company was not a job posting at all, and it was not a networking. It was not from anybody that I knew. I was following writers and editors that I liked and found interesting on Twitter, and I saw that one of the editors here had posted about a different job that she was looking to fill. And so I contacted her, we started talking, I came in to talk to her about that job, and she said, actually, I think you would be perfect for a different job. So it was a job posting that they were never going to post, a position that they weren't really sure they wanted to fill, and it kind of happened by chance.
I really like to focus a little bit on some of that journey, because I think you brought up some important points. And the fact that right now we sometimes still live in this society where it's kind of not what you know, but who you know. And so I think a lot of times young professionals can feel pressured, particularly if we're not from a connected background, on how we navigate this corporate world and kind of get into the jobs we want without knowing the right people. You kind of alluded to some of those techniques and strategies, but perhaps you would like to elaborate on if any advice to how to kind of get that foot in the door.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I have seen that now that I'm in a position to do hiring, and I've seen that a lot of the publications I've worked for. It's unfortunate, but it's understandable from a management point of view, because it's, oh, well, who do we know, and who do you know that we know, and so they kind of hire within their networks. And unfortunately, you end up, every industry ends up feeling really small. And I've actually worked with some of the same people at different publications because you kind of all hire within your network. So it can be really daunting when you're not within that network and you don't know those people. I make it a point as a hiring manager now to try to find people that are outside of my network. And I've successfully hired several people that were just posted on LinkedIn or posted on Media Bistro, posted on various other job sites, and they've actually been great hires. So hopefully more hiring managers who are like me, who kind of came up without those connections, will be doing those same things. But since a lot of hiring managers do kind of hire within their networks, how you can break through that is definitely intern. Volunteer if you can. I know it's really hard to work without pay, but another way to go about it is to do work on spec. So depending on your industry, if you can create a project or write an article or do something that's within that industry and then send that to them and say, I did this, and I'm not, and if they like it, then they pay you, sort of thing. Another good way is what I did with social media. You follow the people that have the jobs that you want, or you follow people who are in the industries that you're interested in, and you're smart about how you interact with them. So you don't want to follow somebody and just say, hi, give me a job. You start commenting and sharing things with them, connecting with them in kind of an organic way. And then if it makes sense, you can ask for an informal informational interview. Ask smart questions during that. Don't take up a lot of their time. And always, always, always try to see how you can help them rather than approaching it with like, how can they help me? So you don't want to reach out to somebody and say, hi, I really like a job in your industry. How do I get it? It's, I've noticed what you're doing. Here's some great ideas I have. Here's a problem that I think you have that I can help solve. Give them something, make it kind of more of a beneficial relationship rather than reaching out to people and just asking for things. And yeah, so follow the places that you want to work, really get to know your industry. It's very impressive when you're talking to somebody and you're very familiar with what they do and what their company does. And I would say, yeah, don't just look at job postings. That was probably the biggest mistake that ate up a lot of my time early in my career, was I would just scour job postings and reply to job postings. And actually, most jobs are not actually posted. They're a vacancy within the company that maybe they're looking to fill. They're not sure. Maybe they'll reach out to somebody informally and not actually post it. And then, of course, stay in touch with everybody that in your life, staying in touch with your former classmates, your professors, your former coworkers and bosses. Since people do tend to recommend people they already know, you'll someday start to build that network that you already have. And I think it's important too, to again, not just look at what you can get from people, but what you can provide for them. So if you see that there's a job posting that's not right for you, but you remember that you worked with a great, say, graphic designer that would be good for that job posting, or you've heard of that opportunity, making those connections and offering somebody else something can help when they see the same.
Well, that's actually a very powerful point, because sometimes we think of, like, when we want to network or break into an industry, we think of all the ones at the top. And I even had this colleague, she works at the Oscars, and she got the Oscars, she's been doing it for now over 4 years, managing the Oscars, and she got it through the guy that gets her chairs for events. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that although they don't seem like the decision maker or the one that we have to target, they still can be connected in ways that we might not anticipate. So if you kind of build authentic and meaningful relationships with everyone, from senior level C-suite to the ones you get your chairs from, or perhaps brings coffee in as an assistant and things, they can still be just as connected.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, we've written about it at Fast Company before, of the people that you need to network with in each stage of your career. And it's pretty ambitious for an entry-level person to approach somebody in the C-suite and ask for their time. And that person probably doesn't have the time. So it's usually good to look maybe one job level above what you have, because that's the job that you want next. So that's the person that you want to talk to.
That's a good point too. And then also, you never know as well, like you said, sometimes it's not just about you have to, it's the long game, not the short game, so to speak, right? You got to put your feelers out, get your face there. So then when the opportunity comes, like how with Fast Company, you didn't apply for a job, but you were in some ways kind of, I don't want to say thrown into it, but the universe kind of aligned things for you when you needed it. So I guess in some sense, you need a little bit of patience when you're first starting to build it if you don't have it established yet.
Yes, exactly.
And with that in mind, once you kind of building up kind of your network, one other kind of struggle that we have is sometimes asking for what we want, or kind of creating and seizing those opportunities. We're talking about a journey where in a lot of ways we're creating those opportunities and those pathways for our careers. Do you have any advice in terms of how we can ask for what we want, whether we're looking for a job or whether maybe we're in our job already and we just want a promotion or something else?
Yeah, I think, and this is another thing that I was horrible at early in my career. I kind of learned a lot of this through trial and error, and everybody listening and everybody reading, our content on Fast much luckier than I am, because they're kind of going to be several steps ahead. I think the mistakes that I made early in my career is I just didn't ask. I felt like grateful when I would get a position, and so I would just take whatever they offered me. And it wasn't until like several years into my career that I realized that there's a lot of room for negotiation, and you need to negotiate. I think the biggest thing that people are afraid of, that I was afraid of, is that you'll get turned down. But it's not. I think you have to think of negotiation not as just a one-off conversation, or a conversation where it's, can I have this? No, you can't, and that's it. I think you should think of it as a mutually beneficial ongoing conversation where you talk about what you'll bring for them, and they'll talk about what they'll do for you. So I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is this: they frame it as, again, like what they want to get out of it. Or they frame it as, I need this amount of money because I have this much student loans that I need to pay off. That's not at all telling the employer what you're going to give them and why they should then compensate you or promote you in return. So I think you need to kind of enter the conversation with a plan of like, here's the value that I'm already bringing, here's my plans for the future, and here's why this promotion or this raise should equally reflect that. I think another mistake people made, that I certainly made, was not knowing how much they're worth. Especially early in your career, you can feel really grateful to get anything. And you can feel like, well, I don't have the experience, so I have to take whatever they offer me. But it's really powerful to know where you fit in the market. So knowing what your industry pays, what that particular job pays, and what people in your city pay. So if I'm applying for an entry-level magazine job in New York versus an entry-level newspaper job in Omaha, they're different, they're different markets, and so they get paid different things. And so there's websites like Glassdoor are great to kind of get a feel for, is what they're offering you fair for your position, your background, your industry, your city.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because I personally have struggled with that too. I very much, like you, created a kind of had to get my foot in the door by building up experience kind of on the peripheral. So I did a lot of volunteer work. And so making the transition from kind of in-kind pro bono and volunteer work to get that foot in the door and get clients and build up that portfolio to paid work was a big struggle and a challenge, because you're a little bit unsure of what your value can be, and then two, you kind of are also scared that you'll scare all your clients away, and you want to kind of just take what you can get. So for individuals out there who are kind of working on trying to growing their brand and things, and it's not necessarily as black and white of like just looking at Glassdoor, do you have advice for kind of how do we just kind of get that internal courage or that kind of strategic mindset to start to build that up?
I mean, as far as courage goes, I'm notoriously shy, and it's hard to do. You kind of just have to do it. And I think part of it comes with the mindset of, like I said, not viewing it as an adversarial relationship, trying to view it more as your partners. You both want the same thing. How will you reach a mutually beneficial decision? And so not believing and not kind of going into it saying, I want this. If they don't give this to me, then that's it. And they're my enemy, and I have to try to convince them of giving me what I want. I think especially when budgets are tight, it's good to try, or when you hit a wall with a no, when you say you want a certain salary and they say, sorry, our budget is this instead. I think it's good to get a little creative with your negotiation. You can say, okay, well, if you can't give me this salary, how about a signing bonus? Or if you can't give me this salary, how about an extra week of vacation? Or, other benefits. There's a lot more, I think, that we're kind of used to thinking in black and white terms of yes or no, this is it. And if I can't get this, then I can't take this job. But I think there's a lot of other things you can kind of think of.
And looking now on your career and your journey, you've certainly kind of grown in different areas. Is there one kind of moment? Is there a moment looking back that that's kind of shaped your career more than you would have anticipated, or the one that particularly kind of stands out?
I don't know. I mean, I think that very first magazine job really kind of set the ball in motion, and that was really, I'm really grateful to that editor-in-chief who kind of took that chance on me and saw that potential, and that's kind of really informed then, now that I'm a manager, my hiring decisions, to take a chance on somebody who maybe doesn't have the direct experience in the direct industry, but shows potential, and to kind of think outside of the box in that way. I've definitely had a lot of managers who've taught me both how I want to manage and how I don't want to manage. I've had great managers who've helped me learn and challenged me, and I've had horrible managers who yelled and screamed and threw things. And obviously, I never thought that wasn't a style I was considering, but I've seen how good management and poor management really shapes the whole culture and the whole environment. I think I've heard the saying that you don't quit a job, you quit a boss, which I think is really true. I love Fast Company and I love my work here, but I also love the people that I work with. And I think that if I didn't like the people I work with, loving my job would not be as would maybe not be as big of an element. So I think obviously you need to love both your work and your coworkers, but your manager makes a big difference.
Well, I guess that's definitely also a tip then for bridging the gap on the industry side too, and making sure you take the time to foster those relationships. I really respect the fact that you try and take chances. I as well as always found that it's the ones you take chances on that always end up coming to the plate and presently surprising you sometimes. But you have to it's a chicken and egg scenario. You have to give someone a chance sometimes before they have the experience, so you can see what they can do.
Yeah, I think I found the people that maybe haven't had all of the network built around them and haven't had all of the opportunities. Those are the people that don't have that, are usually the people who work a lot harder. Yes, and
from you had mentioned you've learned things from your different managers and such. I'm always curious to learn, is there what is the best advice that you've received from someone else?
I had a boss, one of my early bosses, who whenever anybody would complain about not wanting to do something, he would say, well, that's why it's called work, which isn't really earth-shattering advice, but I think that I say that to myself sometimes when I'm doing something that I find difficult or I'm scared of or is not fun. I mean, my job is really fun a lot of times, and hopefully you find a job that you really enjoy, but it's not always going to be fun, and you have to do the work. You can't only just do what you like. So yeah, I kind of repeat to myself, well, that's why it's called work.
That's a good way of putting it, for sure. I just want to thank you, Kathleen. I really appreciate you taking the time on Bridging the Gap to share some of your insights. It really is, I think, particularly with today's market, it is a lot about taking that initiative, as you've explained, to get your foot in the door and really know what you want and not be afraid to ask for it. People can't read your mind and know what you want. So unless you ask for it, you really won't have an opportunity to even explore if it's possible.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
For those of you listening, now it's your turn. What do you think? Add your thoughts to the discussion using the hashtag BridgingTheGap on Twitter, and give this podcast a thumbs up if you like some of the advice and thoughts that we've been sharing today. I want to thank you again, Kathleen, for taking the time. And for our listeners, together we can start bridging the gap between industry and youth.